All right, perfect. Thank you. Appreciate it. Well, good morning again. I'm Izabella. This is Dawn. We'll do some formal introductions because we do have some slides for you to go through. So I want to preface by saying this is not a technical session. We will not be giving you a test after. But as we talked, Dawn and I actually just a few minutes ago, this is something that we've presented before, and we're thrilled to share our professional journeys with you. And we hope that some of that will reflect your professional journeys. I know we have some individuals that are just coming into the field. They're probably curious, what that journey looks like, which direction to take. We hope that we can provide some of those experiences that will help you all make some of those decisions, especially if you're early on in your career. Otherwise, for those that are already engraved in their careers, hopefully, again, some of that reflects well with you. And I'm hoping we will have some time towards the end and would love to hear some of your journeys as well. So bear with us for the next, hopefully 40, 45 minutes. But again, it's a very informal session. So if you do have any comments, I'm sure Dawn will attest to that as well. Please feel free to chime in. This is not like leave your questions for the last 10 minutes of the session. So without any further ado, let's get going. So just quickly, I'm not going to read verbatim, but just quickly a little bit high level, because we'll get into some more details as we go through the presentation. So currently I am a director at the clinical engineering department in Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Beverly Hills, as well as what we call clinical technology. And one of these days we'll merge the names. I know we've talked so much about HTM, biomed, clinical engineering. Who are we, right? And even myself have two different names at the two different hospitals that I manage. Huntington Hospital, actually the name has changed recently to Huntington Health in Pasadena, just outside of LA. And a lot of that has come together almost a couple of years ago, where the two hospitals affiliated as part of the Cedars-Sinai health system. I have also had the pleasure, and this is where probably formally our journey, the two of us, has started professionally, and our friendship when we worked together with Aramark at Mount Sinai Medical Center in New York City. That was a wonderful experience. We've enjoyed it. And of course, moved on since then, and we'll talk about that into all our other journeys. Prior to that, Bowman Hospital, Royal Oak, one of their main campuses, but I know since then, because that was over 15 years ago now, has become a much larger system in the greater Detroit area. I've had the pleasure of being part of ACCE, so a pitch for that. Great organization to be part of, especially as you are thinking about getting involved in extracurricular activities. I know we talked about that at the Women of HTM yesterday. ACCE, AME, HIMSS, your local organizations, and things like that. Certified clinical engineer, another pitch for certifications, and then some routine academics are included. So with that, I will let Don talk about his extensive professional journey.
So good morning, everybody. I'm Don Armstrong. Izabella and I have known each other for close to 15 years. I reached out to her at an AME conference in about 2008. I was getting ready to leave Palo Alto, California, where I worked at Stanford for 25, 26 years, and was moving to New York City. And I read an article by Izabella, and I think the AME News, or maybe AME Newsletter, where her journey from leaving Michigan to go to New York City, and how she kind of navigated that. So me being me, I'm pretty extroverted kind of guy. I could walk up to anybody and talk to you. I probably have done that with you already. I just saw her at a conference, and I tapped on her shoulder, and I said, can we talk for a few minutes? I'm Don. I'm getting ready to leave California to move to New York City. Tell me about what it's like, right? Where do I do? Who do I talk to? I hadn't applied for a job in 25 years. As fate would have it, we got along really well just at that conference, a 10-minute conversation. She was very nice. And about a year and a half later, I'm applying for a job, and a job came across my desk that would be working for Izabella. So I talked to the recruiter, and she said, there's an operations manager at Aramark. Maybe that's not for you, because I was like a senior level biomed at the time, had never been in management. So I said, well, that's Isabella's hospital, right? And she says, you know her? And I said, well, kind of. I met her for 10 minutes. And so just that 10-minute conversation Izabella and I had turned into an interview, and then turned into a job, and turned into a lifelong, almost at this point, 15-year friendship that'll, I'm sure, will go on for a long time. So, you know, it's just all about having these kind of connections. You're going to hear me say that a lot. So I've been a lifelong biomed. I started working as a biomed when I was 22 years old, right out of tech school. In a couple months, I get to say I've been a biomed for 40 years because I'm turning 62 really soon. So I've been doing this for a long time, and I love it. I get to share my gift of servanthood, as what I kind of call it. When I train new biomeds and speak to new biomeds coming into the field, I tell them it's very intimidating, very daunting what we do. All these new pieces of equipment, all these new things we have to know and learn. What I tell people is you're just there to help. That's what you're going to do. You answer every service call. You go in every day knowing my job is to help out. My job is to help the people get the resources and the technology working the best they can, right? And I feel I'm very lucky to get to do that. I love the HTM field and what it's done for me and my family. I met my wife at a hospital. You know, I'd never had a family before, and when I met my wife, who was a chief nurse, has been a chief nurse for a lot of years. She had a 10-year-old son, and now I've got a wife and a family and a granddaughter now, which probably would have never happened if I wasn't a biomed. I worked at Stanford, I worked at UCSF, I worked at GE, and now currently I'm a technical training manager for Renovo Solutions. Been with them since 2020. Really like the organization. I love what I get to do. I get to impact biomeds on a daily basis from a training standpoint. Not an educator, I'm a trainer. I train people on how to work on equipment and how to be a functioning biomed in today's world. On faculty currently with Amy, teaching the CBET review course with my buddy Dave Scott there. Dave Scott is the person that actually built that from the Colorado area biomed group. And I reached out to Amy several years ago, about 3 or 4 years ago when I moved from California to Florida in my journey. Reached out to Amy and said, where do you need me? What can I do? I'm looking to kind of expand and grow and take a new role on. And they said, well, David needs some help teaching the CBET review course. Are you interested? And I said, sure. I love doing it. So maybe some of you in this room have gone through the CBET review course and you've met Dave and I through that course. Love doing it. I'm a CBET, CHTM. I've been on, I'm a member of Amy, a lot of conferences and councils and standards with Amy. I was on the TMC board for a lot of years, one of my favorite things I've done in the industry for a long time. Currently on the editorial board for BIT. And believe me, I'm gonna stop talking about myself soon because I wanna hear about you guys eventually. So it's kind of hard, you know. Past president of HTMA Texas, which is one of the sponsors of this conference. In 2000, I think 15 or 14 or 15, Houston decided to start up a biomed association, brought a bunch of us technicians from the area, and we elected a board, and they were crazy enough to elect me president. So I got to be president of that association for 2.5 years, and I loved it. I learned a lot, really did. Member of CABMET, CMIA, and HTMA Texas, and their local biomed associates. I'm a big believer in doing all that kind of stuff. Keep yourself engaged.
Time's up, Don.
Huh?
Time's up. That was it.
Oh, Tootie, is that your timer on me? It should be. So what this session is going to be, Izabella and I are going to talk about our career progression into senior level positions within our organizations. We'll provide guidance, suggestions, some tips, some strategies on what you can do, where you are now, and where you want to go. We're going to make this pretty interactive. We're going to be asking you guys some tough questions, some internal questions you need to ask yourself, and where you want to go and where you want to be. All right? We just don't want to sit up here and blather on about what we did. We want to ask you questions about what you can do. Okay, and join us. I mean, there's going to be some key points we're going to drive home with you guys, and hopefully you guys can reach your goals and see where you want to be. This is a great profession. 40 years into this, there's all kinds of different directions you can take. Everybody's path is different. I know a lot of the people in this room already, and all of us have come together for some reason or another, but it's an amazing, amazing field to be in. And I'm going to pass this back over to Izabella.
Thank you, Don. I thought you will never stop talking.
Me too.
No, we like to share our experiences, as you've probably seen so far. So hopefully, again, as Don indicated, this will be a pretty interactive session. We'll go through our individual slides, but again, please do chime in if something piques your interest or it triggers something that you would like to share with the group here. Please do. All right, so I know it's relatively small, so you cannot really probably even see the pictures, but this is a journey that I want to take you through a few slides in terms of education, employment, just high level stuff, professional organization, certifications. As you've probably seen, we're very, very much involved outside of our day-to-day jobs, and we like to promote that. We feel that this has brought us a lot of professional growth, but also a lot of joy and a lot of what I would say connections, because I know you mentioned, Don, that connections and contact lists and things like that will come up in both of our slides. Family, cannot forget about that. I know Don alluded to his family. I'll talk a little bit about mine, because as you probably all can attest to that, cannot do any of that without some form of a support, whatever that support is. And usually family is a good support system. Friendships, again, a lot of that, and we do have some slides related to that. I hope you all have a friend at work, and there are actually some statistics related to having a more enjoyable and rewarding professional experience if you do have friendship or a friend, have a friend at work. And of course, fun. At the end of the day, especially girls just want to have fun, right? Okay, so a little bit about me from the beginning and how my biomed, HTM, clinical engineering career started in South Africa. So I am originally from Poland, born in Poland. I left Poland when I was 11, actually from Middle East, and then eventually ended up in South Africa, right at the tip of Africa, Cape Town. So a lot of it was driven by my family, actually my dad, who at that time was working at University of Cape Town, which is right in front of this beautiful mountain. It's part of the Table Mountain mountainous system. Some beautiful beaches, although you may think it's California, which is where I live right now, but that is actually part of Cape Town. So this is a place where I did my undergrad in electrical engineering, because my dad was an electrical engineer and was working in the electrical engineering department. So I thought, well, maybe I will become an electrical engineer, right? We had a lot of engineers in the family at that time. So I started doing that, but something just didn't feel right. So when I got to my 4th year, thank goodness, in South Africa, probably in the United States may have been a little different. This was early 90s, early to mid 90s. Biomedical engineering was just coming around. So it was not a very popular field to study. There were biomedical engineering departments in the hospital. Obviously, hospitals still existed there. Medical equipment was needed. Patients needed to be taken care of. But it was just kind of emerging. So elective classes were offered, and I took them, and I thought, wow, this is amazing. Let me explore this, because electrical engineering was there, but not really something that I wanted to pursue as a career. So I started doing those electives, and at that time, my parents, mostly my dad, again, job driven, they were moving to United States, to Connecticut, where my dad was working, retired since then, at Pratt & Whitney. So I thought, well, let me explore what other programs I can get to that are close to the biomed, clinical engineering. And I'll get into another slide to talk about my next journey, which is the University of Connecticut, and that's kind of how my biomed journey started after that. But I'll be remiss not to mention this handsome gentleman that you probably cannot see, but that is my husband now, not then. But we are both Polish, met in South Africa, mostly again driven by our parents' jobs, actually our dad's jobs that took us there. And what you cannot see very well, these are some very old pictures, a herd of elephants. So we were trying to pose very quickly when we went on a safari, pretty wild safari, before we got into our car and drove away very, very fast. So moving on, as I mentioned, UConn, University of Connecticut. Does anybody know or is familiar with the UConn program, especially the UConn internship? Okay. Wonderful internship, so another pitch for that, especially if you're looking for graduate degrees, if you're at that point in your career and getting more into biomedical engineering from academic standpoint of view. So after I did my undergrad and my parents moved, I tagged along, and I ended up at Hartford Hospital in Hartford, Connecticut. that was one of the hospitals at that time that was participating in the UConn biomedical engineering program, which is great because you get the academics, but you also get the practical experience. So for the next 2 years, I was not just doing academic classes in the evening, but actually working as a clinical engineering intern. So had that full exposure to a clinical engineering or biomedical engineering department at that time at Hartford Hospital.
I asked Izabella when we were going over these slides, kind of preparing for it, and I said, "You want me to put the new UConn men's basketball team on there because they just won the national championship?"
Women.
So she's all, "Well, would you be able to
it
find something?" And I said, "I think we could find some kind of poster or something." But she left the women's up there, which was
yeah, we left the women's.
They're much more well known for their women's basketball, but
yes,
they have
but
won
this year, yeah,
five national championships.
Great. Yeah. Yes, but yeah, we're very, very proud of them. So go Husky. So a little bit about the education and some, I would say some takeaway messages for me as I was kind of getting, like I said, into the academics and you know where was my head at that point, which again, some of that may or may not apply if you're pursuing more academics or are in academics right now to get into the kind of hands-on biomed. But discover your passion, kind of relates to what I mentioned, right? Started with electrical engineering, but discovered biomed. I know it was purely coincidental, nothing planned, and sometimes that's how it is, and best things come in life when they're not planned. Sometimes you do want to plan. Develop solid foundations. So, you know, research your educational programs. I know many of you, as you work, there may be opportunities, you know, especially where you are in your career and if your employer supports, which hopefully they do, to pursue you know, additional academic degrees. So please do some homework on that and what's available and how that will benefit not just the current but future of your career. Talk to others, seek mentorship. I think you will see that word mentioned in previous presentations that I've seen at MD Expo, but also our presentation today. Both of us are good resources. You know, each one of you could be a mentor to each other. Practical, theoretical, you know, how much of, you know, where you want to go, because our profession can go either way. There's so many different avenues within HTM. Of course, creative ways to finance your education. There's always, you know, that component that you have to take into consideration. You know, specialization, management. I know we've heard from Carol, if you have attended Carol's and Kurt's session earlier today, not every clinical engineer is going to end up in management, right? There are some other specialties within clinical engineering that we can pursue. And sometimes we go to management and we come back to that traditional clinical engineer model. Contact list, we spoke about that. And of course, women, still a minority in the engineering field, but we're starting to see, obviously, you can see today, and through MD Expo, more and more women and getting into the field. So would certainly love to see more of the women in engineering presentation, maybe even some, I don't know, listserv or other things, how we can continue to enhance that presence, because we're, like I said, still very much a minority. Some pictures here, and again, hopefully you can see that, especially in the back. I know it's, some of them are a little darker. You know, they're 20, 30 plus years. So this is actually me here and my sister-in-law, which is my husband's twin sister, you've seen in the previous slide, who at that time was studying nursing at Groote Hospital, which is one of the major hospitals in Cape Town. I came to visit, and probably not something you would really be able to do today, especially during COVID times, but she took me on a tour to a lot of these different places. Never thought I'll have to wear a mask for the last 3 years. Of course, you know, in surgical areas, you still have to, but, you know, we were playing pretend stuff, and now it's like a, you know, daily occurrence. And you can see the evolution of some of the equipment, you know, thinking of this 20, 25 plus 30 almost years ago. Some of the devices, like the anesthesia gas machines, not, you know, evolution, but not as big as you see with some of the other technologies that we're using today. And probably recognize the level 1, the 1200, hasn't changed a bit, right? 25, 30 years, gosh, still working. Why change it if it's reliable and working well, right? So a few other things in terms of employment, again, my takeaway messages without getting into the nitty-gritty technical stuff. Be curious, ask questions, show commitment, engagement, interest. I know that was one of the things, especially when I was starting early on. Don't be afraid of hard work. There may be long hours. I can tell you, it hopefully is not going to be forever, because we all talk about the balance, obviously, between family and our work. So please do not forget about that, because it is very important. But do balance it well, because there is a return on investment at the end of the day. Some of the things eventually, put your name out there, present, right? I do see some of the less seasoned or younger or entry clinical engineers into the field, starting to present, whether it's MD Expo, your local organizations. I know CMIA in California is really big, and we have quite a few opportunities to present. Don and I actually did that at the CMIA symposium last year. Amy, any of these other organizations, please don't be afraid to submit a paper, an abstract, or a call for presentation. Hopefully it will get accepted. It's a wonderful opportunity to put yourself out there and present, be recognized. I know you have to start somewhere. It's a journey again, but it's a very rewarding journey. And formulate your goals. I know we talked about sometimes be spontaneous, but sometimes it is good to maybe put 3 or 4 goals for yourself. Come January, this is set of goals for the following calendar year. And then paint your career early on, if you can. Sometimes, things take you in different direction, and then you have to redirect. That's okay too. But if you have at least some ideas, work towards that, so you have a goal.
Who's that?
I don't know. Who is that? Yeah, don't recognize the face, so much younger. All right, so mentorship, we cannot stress that enough. And one of the other things that I wanted to mention here, is that human touch, right? Now that I went into management and, we're grooming, managers, especially coincidentally, I got 2 new managers at Huntington and then the other at Cedars, and they're what I would call entry level. We started them very, very early in their management career, so they have to be groomed and, provide that, leadership onboarding, provide that human touch too, right? I mean, think back, at your early start, how that was, and what were the needs and the questions you were asking at that, or I was asking at that time. But recognize that talent early. I can tell you that one of my managers today, she started with me. She has a finance degree, but she started with me as an administrative assistant. And she picked up very quickly, got to know the business, went from administrative assistant to a project coordinator, and then now she's actually supervisor going into a manager. She picked up so well. Some of the people that don't know her are asking, wow, where did you get her? Her technical skills are so great. And she doesn't come from an engineering degree. So I can tell you that anything is possible. Google yourself. Make sure your name is out there. I do that occasionally. Don't feel bad about that. And please do keep your LinkedIn account current. I actually just recently, the last few months, did that. So I'm preaching because I had to go back and do that. Sometimes we forget that, but it's a wonderful connection, as many probably can attest to that. So a few other things we talked about: presentations, articles, present your accomplishments. Don't be afraid to write them down. I know sometimes we forget, gosh, what did I do last year? What did I do last month, right? Put that together, especially as you are interested in growing professionally. Make sure that you highlight that. And what better way is to put that on paper so you remember.
And just to let you know that presenting at one of these conferences like this, it's not all that daunting. It's kind of maybe a little intimidating to stand up here in front of 45 or 50 or 20, 30 people. But actually putting an abstract together to present a topic is not all that daunting, right? And you just when they ask for presenters, you put like a 2 or 3 sentence abstract of what you think you want to present on, how you want to present it, and then you present it for acceptance. And when they accept it, then you got to put together your presentation. Hopefully you have your presentation already kind of built out in your mind, but it's not all that difficult. You don't have to have the presentation built first. You have to have the idea built first, right? I'm sorry, my throat's a little bit funny, but I talk a lot. But again, it's not all that daunting to do it. So really consider, if you're sitting here and you're at the conference, maybe you consider next year you present. So we all have experiences, right?
Yeah, and be confident. Because one of the things early on somebody told me, when you're here presenting, I know you may be a little nervous and like Don said, maybe a little bit daunting, but you are still the expert, right? You come here to present because you feel comfortable about the topic. Otherwise, why would you submit this topic? It's because you enjoy it, you feel knowledgeable about it, and you can speak to it. So one of the things that I've remembered all these years is, gosh, I'm here because I know what I'm talking about, right? And I know there will be questions, and some questions may catch you off guard. Don't feel bad about saying, well, let me take your number or email and I'll get back to you, because there may be other things you need to research offline before you can answer that question.
Yeah.
And the other stuff we talked about as well. I want to make sure that Don has enough time because he likes to talk. Again, we talked about the affiliation that came together between Huntington Health and Cedars-Sinai Medical Center back in August of 2021. So it will be 2 years soon. And soon after that is when I took on the clinical engineering department at Cedars and continued with Huntington as well. So a little bit about each. So Huntington Health, again, I want to read through all this. I believe those slides will be available to you, so you can go through the details. But for those of you that do not know Pasadena, but may on New Year's Day be watching the Rose Parade. Has anybody watched that? Okay, so that's a few of you. Beautiful. You would not imagine if you ever get a chance to actually come to Pasadena for New Year's Day. These are all real roses, all kinds of other flowers, seeds, I mean, you name it. Chickpeas, whatever they use, it's beautiful to see. And there's actually an ability for you to see those on display after the actual parade. But a little bit about Huntington. It's a smaller hospital, 619, but we usually operate at about 400, 420 beds, at least what we staff to. The clinical technology team, 8 technicians. We have the supervisor that I mentioned. We have 1 clinical engineer, which actually, to Carol's and Kurt's point, that took a little bit of finagling and analytics to support that position, because until 2017, Huntington did not have a clinical engineer. So I said, oh gosh, it took me a few years, but finally got that clinical engineer position. Admin and then myself, just a little bit over 10,000, 10,500 devices. And we now, as part of the affiliation, report to what we call Enterprise Information Services, Cedars joint venture between the 2 hospitals. Yeah. Oh gosh, I wish you probably did not attend the 8 o'clock with Carol and Kurt that I mentioned. I do believe they do the recording and slides, right? Please do listen to that afterwards. We can certainly talk more, probably a session or a workshop to talk about this. But Arif is smiling because him and I have frequent conversations on how to justify and how to sustain, right? Because that's another thing. So certainly would love to talk offline because we all went through that. And I'm sure many in the audience here. So yeah, definitely something that we can assist with. So Cedars-Sinai, again, lots of information, much bigger department, 33 BMEDs. We have actually there 4 clinical engineers, much bigger department, obviously close to 1,000 beds, a little bit over 33 now, probably 34,000 devices, also reporting to EIS. Okay, so the next few slides are, again, my pitch, and cannot emphasize enough getting involved in all those professional organizations. Doesn't mean you have to start big. You can start small, research what those local, state, and then eventually national, international conferences, meetings, professional meetings, and things like that are available within, your specific regions. but certainly, become a member. With Amy coming up, I don't know how many of you are planning on attending in Long Beach. There is usually an ACCE membership meeting that is open to all, not just members of ACCE. And it's a wonderful networking opportunity to meet others within your field. Become a fellow eventually, once you obviously paid your dues and contributions. And I think I've mentioned it in the Women of HTM yesterday. I was part of the fellow nominating committee. And one of the things that have come up, which they actually track, interestingly, I didn't notice that last year, is the number of women submitting their application for the fellow, which I'm sure other organizations did it as well. But it's still very, very small percentage. Actually, this year, we did not have any women submitting an application for fellow within AME. So they track that, and they're asking, all of us in our profession to continue to promote that. So more and more women are not just, getting involved, but also, providing their applications for fellowships in different professional organizations. Certifications, I know we've talked about that. It pretty much comes up at every session that I have attended so far at MD Expo. And I know some of these guys here can talk about their personal experiences in teaching, especially the CBET certification, CCE. I know we have the HTM certification now, and lots of other, especially as we get into the cybersecurity, IT side of clinical engineering. So a little bit about my family now, right? Like I said, cannot go without mentioning them and the support that they have provided in not just my professional, but day-to-day life. So as I mentioned, my husband that you've seen in the previous picture, he stuck around and continued with the journey. We got married actually in St. Thomas, eloped, without any family, which actually was really nice. We've enjoyed that. For some of you that may have done that as well can probably relate to it. And then over the last few years, ended up with 3 kids. So this is what we call Juji, James. He is disabled. He was our first one, had no idea about any of the genetics, but he does have a genetic disorder, which actually comes in handy knowing about some of the equipment that we now see in the hospital, because we have it at home as well. He's been wonderful, but certainly has given us a new perspective on raising kids. So a little bit after that came Benji. This was his kindergarten graduation. And then a few years later, as we call him, our little devil, Charlie, redheaded, full of energy. I thought the last one, oh my goodness, will be calmer, but he's probably the most aggressive in a good way, very, very demanding, very active. So he's keeping us on our toes, but a joy to have around. So those are the 2 little ones, which you may have seen my that's not a cast, it's the brace that I wear. Actually cannot really move around with it, so I took it off. But recently I had an injury playing with those 2 little devils, and they broke what they call the boxer's break. So it's the bone at the back of my right hand, which is my primary hand. So it's a little tricky. Last year, for those of you, I know Don remembers, I had a broken toe playing with them. So I'm just trying to wonder what is going to happen next year. And then friendships, as I mentioned, some statistics for you to read before I hand it over to Don. But you probably recognize this handsome face here from the was it last year's? Last year's Amy. And Liz, which is another good friend of mutual friend that has worked with us actually at Mount Sinai in New York, that we've been in touch all these years and continue our friendship. But cannot emphasize enough, don't just go to work for the work. Make sure that you have that, personal touch as well. And like I said, make a friend. Hopefully you do have a friend that you can relate to at work as well, not just professionally, but from a friendship perspective. And of course, as I mentioned, being a woman, girls just want to have fun, right? Don't ever stop having that fun. Like I said, don't just go to work for the work of it. make sure that you also enjoy waking up in the morning and going to work, which I do every day of my life. So, little thing that I found as I was dusting up some of those old pictures, must have kept it for a reason, that would come in handy for this presentation. And with this, I'll hand it over to Don.
Okay, thanks, Izabella. So I've met her family. I know her family pretty well. The kids are so much fun and so funny. And being that I have a 2-year-old granddaughter, I see my little granddaughter in her Charlie. They're just so much fun and so full of energy and smart and interesting and so much fun to be around. So I'm Don Armstrong. Introduction already happened, but I want to tell you a little bit about what my part of the presentation is going to be about. It's going to be about you taking charge of your own career. It's you are in charge of everything, right? You might have a manager or director or someone you think may be standing in your way. It's not true. It's up to you to make your own path. I encourage you to reach for what you want, right? And planning the steps to help you get there. Some strategies that I use, some strategies that Izabella and I have talked about. Some of the colleagues I have in this room, we've always kind of had these conversations of really, where do you want to go and how are you going to get there, right? And how to make yourself marketable. Whether you're a director, a manager, or you're an entry-level technician, you can make yourself marketable, right? Just by being yourself and doing the hard work and getting there. I like to have a lot of pictures. I've loved Parks and Recs, so that's one of my favorite memes from Parks and Recs. And those of you that have taken my CBET review course always see my dogs. That's the first screen that comes up when people log onto any one of my calls, or my 2 little dogs. That's Lulu and Belle, and they keep my house pretty busy now that we are empty nesters. The presentation will not be about, I'm not going to encourage you to leave or stay anything. It's up to you. I'm going to tell you the advantages or disadvantages of both, give you some real world experience because I've been around a little bit. Having your career path, you should know where your career path has been and where you're going and what the importance of every stop was along the way, because every stop is an opportunity for you to grow and learn, right? Even if it's a little bit of a backward step, you still learn from it, so that could be positive, right? I'm one of those glass half full kind of guys. My wife teases me that I'm a glass overflowing kind of guy. I see the positive in almost everything because I kind of just do it, just kind of how I'm made. But you know, if you could look at everything as an opportunity, you can kind of go forward with that, right? And I'm not going to be pushing you in any kind of direction you're not comfortable with. Of course, you own your own career, but I'm going to give you some advice and some hard truths and some pretty good suggestions. Before we get started, I have some tough questions for you. This is the interactive part for you. Hopefully that's why you came in here. That's why you're going to sit here and not just listen to me blather on. I want you to think a little bit. So there's the thinking guy, and this is me back in 1984 when I first started at Stanford. Had the mullet, working on an O2 analyzer. You can actually remember the old chemical O2 analyzer. You had to pull the actual analyzer probe apart and clean it, put the fluid back in. Really cool stuff. So had a really cool mullet there and a Gumby little badge. It broke my heart when I cut my mullet off. Broke my achy breaky heart. Thank you so much. That's my mullet joke for the day. Thank you. So here's the question I want to ask you guys. As you sit here, are you putting everything you reasonably can put into your career? Right? Are you just going to work at 9 to 5 and that's it? You're good to go, doing a good job? That's great. That's a great place to start. You're doing a good job and you're engaged in what you're doing, right? But are you really putting into everything you can into your career? I'm going to stop right here. This is your career. This is not just your job. Nurses have careers. We all think about it. Doctors, man, that's their career. That's their life's work. You're a biomed. You're taking care of equipment. That's your career. This is not just a job anymore, right? I want you to think about that and be proud of that. So you're not just out working on a job. You got a career, right? You got a direction, right? So try to put everything you can into that career. Are you getting back what you hope for in your work life? And if you're not, why not? If it's not feeding your soul, then why do it? Right? If you're just frustrated and it's terrible and I hate going into work every day, then you got to make a choice, right? Personal and professional decisions happen every day. You got to make those, right? So think about it. If you're getting back what you want to get back, why and why not? What do you really love about being in the HTM field? I'm going to go off script here in just a little bit. It's not the money, right? We could be making more money doing other things probably, right? There's other opportunities to make money, right? Are you doing it because you love helping people? Do you love technology? Do you love the medical field and being a technician was your way in? That's kind of the way it was for me, right? I love the medical field, but how was I going to be in the medical field? I'm not a nurse. I'm not a doctor. I'm married to a nurse who is now a doctor too. but she always wanted to be a nurse. I didn't even know what biomed was when I was 18, 19, 20 years old, right? So what do you love about it, and kind of really lean into that? Why not, right? It's the way to go. Do you aspire to lead? One of the things now, I'm a technical trainer for Renovo Solutions. We're a big company, we're getting bigger. One of your biggest challenges for staffing is entry-level people and new managers, right? I talk to people when I train to them, do you want to be a manager someday? Do you aspire to lead? If you don't, then that's fine. But if you do, I want you to self-identify that to me, to a manager, to a supervisor, because maybe we could bring that, we could foster that in you. So if you aspire to lead, start talking to somebody about it. Start looking into how to actually make that happen, right? And I talk about lead versus manage. I like leading versus managing. I don't want anybody to ever call me a boss. I don't like that. Hey boss, what do we do? I don't want to be anybody's boss. I want to be their leader, right? I was offered a leadership role years ago, and I really thought hard and fast about it because I loved being a technician. I loved being up in the OR. That's kind of my happy place. And I talked to a technician of mine, and I said, yeah, they're offering me the manager position. I don't know if I want to do it. You know, it doesn't feel good to me, you know? And really cool guy. He goes, dude, you're not going to be our manager, man. You're going to be our leader. And right then I said, you know what? I could do it. I wanted to do it. It changed something in me, right? I could be a leader. I don't know if I could be a manager. Manager's weird, right? So just think about it. If you want to lead and don't be intimidated by it, there's a lot of people out there who can mentor you into that. Are you going to go for a higher degree? Think about it. At 50 years old, I got my bachelor's. Had an associate's when I turned 21, 22, just stayed there. Good. I'm good to go. I can get a technician job with an AS degree, but then a manager job showed up. And I was really interested in it, and I thought I was the best person for it. HR said, you're not qualified. Even though I was damn well qualified, I didn't have a bachelor's degree. So I went back and got my bachelor's degree, right? So if you're really looking to do that, there's ways to do it. Take advantage of your tuition reimbursement within your companies or your hospital. If you got it, look into it. I took over at Stanford many years ago. We looked at a $2,000 tuition reimbursement that everybody had, and no one had used. 50 people. I ran a report. No one had touched it. I went to HR and said, explain this to me. How do we use it? How do we gain access to it? I want the technicians to do it. Conferences that had educational, got access to it. Tuition, got access to it. Take advantage of that, right? If you're looking for a higher degree. And are you willing to relocate? That's a tough one, right? It's really scary. It's really tough. I will say this about this question here, and I don't mean to be saying this cavalierly, nothing's permanent, right? You get a job offer, you live in California, you get a job offer in Texas, and you take it. You go there and you just don't like it. It just doesn't fit. Culture of the hospital, the biomed job or the manager job doesn't fit, go back home. You know, I mean, it's not like it's that easy, but don't like, I'm not meant to do this forever. So if you're willing, so think about if you're willing to relocate, because right now there are so many biomed jobs open across the country. If you're willing to move, you could probably maybe even move up a little bit. Okay, so think about these questions. We're probably going to come back to those in a little bit. Things to think about when you're on the job. This is hopefully what you guys are thinking about almost every day, the patients and the families of these patients. We see them every day. You're walking through, you see people walking around, you see them in the cafeteria. Those families are really important, just as important as the patients are. We have an impact on them, right? We're biomeds. We have an impact on what's going on, right? Don't underestimate the impact you're making, right? These little things are just cool little pictures, but I want you to kind of gain something off them, right? And just doing your job isn't doing your job, right? You can do more. Always think about doing more, right? Our job is as biomeds, and I'm a biomed. I'm not a clinical engineer like Izabella. Our DNA is income and inspections and PMs and repairs, right? That's kind of our job, and project management, right? That has a huge impact in the hospital. I talked to my wife about what is important for the nursing staff when it comes to equipment. She says we need it to work, we need it to be available. They don't really give a crap about the PM sticker on the side. I'll be honest, they don't. They're not looking at it. They want that stuff to be available and it works, and to have somebody to respond to if it doesn't. The whole adage of nurses just walk around breaking equipment all day long, they break it, we fix it. Well, of course we fix it. And they use it, and therefore it kind of breaks when you're using it, right? So I need everybody to get away from that adversarial role with their clinical partners. That's not what this is. We're all in this together, right? Why are you in the HTM field? Hopefully you're thinking about that. Really be honest with yourself. Be impactful, be inspired, and be inspirational to somebody else. If you're in a single person shop, get it. You're kind of running a solo gig, right? You're more than likely in a shop with 3 or 4 people. Be inspirational to them, grab them, lift them up. Don't ever tear anybody down, right? There's no reason to do that. Yeah, help them out, encourage them. Someone comes back from a service call and they say, what was it? We all know this. They say, well, something so-and-so was, this was what it was. Oh, did you check this? Did you check that? Just be grateful. Say, oh, way to go, good job. You know, keep going, right? Remember our purpose. Our purpose is to take care of the patients, take care of the clinicians, take care of everybody around us, right? And it's not all about you. All this attitude of I have to go up there and do this. Oh, I don't want to go up and do this. Damn, another call. Go up and take care of it. Every call is an opportunity. Every repair is an opportunity. Every PM is an opportunity to learn something, to grow, take pride and grow, and take care of yourself. That's a big deal nowadays, right? Taking care of ourselves. I was just, I'm taking a biomed class right now with some of my technicians, and the assignment this week was to talk about how stressed out you are and how you're dealing with stress at work. Shortage of staff, people being out because of COVID, too much work, we're way too demanding, too many PMs. And I had to respond to him a little bit by saying, just focus on work at work. You know what you have to do at work, focus on that. Don't think about the classwork that I just assigned you. Think about that after work. And take care of yourself. Watch a show, sing a song, go out with your girlfriend, go out with your wife. Take time. Don't be thinking about all three things at one time. It's too hard to do. Huh? Yeah, don't be a Bob. A burned out biomed. As I used to call Bob, we'd see a Bob in our shop, and man, that's a Bob. No, that doesn't go right along with the whole new acronyms they talk about, but people are not being nice. But we talked about that a lot. Boy, that's been a lot of years, City. Here's my career path, starting back in '82 all the way through. I'm not going to bore you with all of it, but I started, graduated healed, and now I'm at Renovo. In 2020, I started there as a technical training manager. And as a traveling biomed, I did that for about a year and a half. As a casual employee, I worked about 2-3 weeks a month as a traveling biomed 3, and then as an interim manager if they needed it. And then the owners of the company came to me about a year and a half ago and asked me if I would want to take over the technical training manager for the whole company, which I love doing. Where we have about 300 biomeds out in the field now, and they need to get some training every now and again, right? So we do that for them. Worked with Deputitis, Trianum, moved to New York City in 2009, where actually that's where I met Izabella. Worked at Stanford from '86 till 2009. Worked for GE Healthcare in New York City and in Houston, Texas. Moved back to California in 2015, where I got back on it. I started with UCSF for about a year, then moved back to Stanford University, my home, kind of my home base. I was a biomed 3 there, senior level biomed there for a year, and then ended up becoming the senior manager of the whole department. Almost 75 biomeds. And I worked with Sudi for years and with Hung. Do you have a question? Well, I went GE Healthcare. That was as a working biomed. Yeah, so no, these were all hospital settings. Yeah, GE has an HTM department where they actually have contracted biomed services like Sodexo, like GE, like Trimedics, like Renovo. You know, we have contracts. So I've always stayed in the hospitals. So that's a good question now. Yeah. And so the reason I actually, when I moved to New York City, got on with the Airmark, I started with Cornell, then met Izabella and went to Airmark for a short time, and then ultimately ended up with GE Healthcare, because GE Healthcare is a company that took over for Mount Sinai when Izabella and they didn't renew their contract. Those of you that are the third party understand that dance that happens, right? There's a contract, they renew it or they don't renew it, right? So, and then, you know, moved in 2020 after taking over the department at Stanford for 3 years, and moved to New York, Florida in 2020 prior to COVID, and then COVID happened, and then I reached out to all my clinical engineering companies and friends and said, I'm in Florida, I have time, I'm in between jobs, where do I go now? So that's when I hooked up with Renovo. Going back here, you see all these steps here? Would be real easy to sit there and say, God, I've moved around a lot, right? Or I've done a lot of things. The important thing is to notice the importance at every step. See right here is a pot that's growing, and its plant that's growing. And these 2 crabs here, I said it's much more of a lateral move for me. Lateral moves are not always bad. Everybody thinks that the only reason to make a move is if you're going to get a pay increase or you're going to get a position increase. True. But if you're leaving, if you're moving around like I had to do, sometimes you end up with a lateral move, or maybe even in your own organization or in town. Maybe it's a better hospital. Maybe the benefits are better. Maybe your opportunities are better, right? So don't always think a lateral move is bad. Grow in the plant you're potted in. Notice the importance of every step. It's not always about the money. I've had job offers before that were more money for being, would have been more money for me. And I looked at it and I did some research and I realized it would have been a terrible move. And I didn't take it, and I was thrilled that I didn't take it, right? So don't always just be, we've lost some really good technicians in the last few years that have just taken like a $2 or $3 an hour raise. Now, I'm not gonna stand up here and tell you that $2 or $3 more isn't important, because maybe it is. If you're a new person and you're only making 22 and you're gonna make 26 afterwards, maybe that's a big deal. But think about the opportunities you're leaving by leaving and going to a different organization, right? Lateral moves not always a bad thing. I talked about that before. Some stats. I don't do a whole lot of research and statistical deep dives, but I wanted to find out what the actual, how long people are staying at their jobs. For people that are median number of years, or wage salary workers, staying with their current role in the years, this was based in 2020, was 4.1 years staying at their current role. This is based on medical repairer data, right? And this is from 2010, 2020. After 2020, the numbers got blown up, right? Everybody was going, you just kind of had no choice. And it's a little different for people, the age group. For people like me, they stay at 9 years. People that are 25 to 38 are 2.8 years. Be really nice for me to say that you guys are going to stay at your current roles now. Probably in 3 or 4 years from now, you're going to be in a different place, right? More than likely, you're going to be in a different place. Guys like Sudi and Hung, who I'm sitting here talking to, they're good friends of mine for years. They've been at the same hospital for how long now? Huh? 26? 20 plus. So you don't want to come out. Sudi's been with the company 24. You know, it's nice to be able to stay at one of these places, right? But more than likely, you're going to move along. And the strategies around doing that, right? So I'm going to give you some tips here in a little bit about that whole moving around. So look at your own path. You saw my path before. Draw your own path. Understand it's not going to be like anybody else's. I would have never guessed my path was going to look like what it looked like a minute ago. Would have never guessed. I thought I'd be out of school, a couple little jobs at Stanford for the rest of my career, and that would be it. But that didn't happen. My wife being a nurse executive, she got promoted from California to New York, so off we go to New York. She got another promotion from New York to Houston, off we go to Houston. She left her job in Houston, back to California. You know, she's the earner of the family, let's be honest. So I went ahead and followed wherever she went. It's very difficult. Yeah, it's difficult. It's emotional. But you're here right now, right? And so you've met me and you've met Izabella, right? If you knew that you were going to be moving somewhere and you saw my email and you say, hey, Don, by the way, you know, me and my husband or me and my significant other are moving from Connecticut to Texas, where would I even look? Who would I even talk to, right? That's what I had to do. That's why I met Izabella at that conference. I had no idea what to do. I hadn't printed out a resume. Let's put it this way. I was so old that I got resume paper and printed it out. So I thought I was going to go hand it to somebody. That isn't the way it goes now, right? These online applications, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's complicated, yeah. But good news is if you're a working biomed or clinical engineer, there's all kinds of opportunities everywhere. Go to HTM jobs, which is a big place now, Amy jobs, local biomed associations.
Because that opens the door for the mentors and for people to bring in the guidance.
Yep, absolutely. And this is an old adage. I used to hate it because it really used to kind of almost offend me when I used to hear this. Sometimes it's more who you know than what you know. You know, because I mean, let's face it, hiring managers, we hire for attitude and we have to train for skill nowadays. We just really do. We want people that sometimes availability is the best attribute that we can ask. You know, we need people that are available and are willing to work. So when you come to your path, ask research about where you should go next. Ask your colleagues. You can ask me or Izabella or anybody in this room. And think about life lessons learned at each step of your career. All those little steps I had, I learned a lot and propelled me forward, right? Even the lateral moves I had to make because I was moving from state to state. I couldn't be asking for promotions. And owning your own career, real briefly, we're going to go through this. This is my lovely wife. Her name's Lori. She has been a nurse executive for many years. Now she has her own nursing executive consulting group. So we're out of Vero Beach. That's her in a little ring light that I always have to put it up and build. She doesn't know how to put it together. And that's her giving a presentation there. She's really, really good. I love listening to her. I've been very lucky. I get to watch Izabella speak a lot, and I get to listen to my wife speak a lot. I've learned a lot just by watching them. And the best way to create your futures is to predict your future is to create it. Owning your career. If you feel stuck, you need to act. Hopefully anybody in this room is like frustrated and stuck. Maybe you are, maybe you aren't. Hopefully you're propelling. You're here, so you're taking ownership of your own career already. Here's some examples of what you can do. Real simple examples. Keep your resume and cover letter up to date. My resume and cover letter are ready to go right now. And you're foolish if it isn't. Because you know something might come across your desk that you say, oh man, right? It's a big deal. Consider higher education. We talked about that before. Get certified. I'm a huge proponent of certification. CBET, CHTM, CRES, CABT, the new one for incoming biomeds. The certification thing as a hiring manager, which I was for a while, it was kind of like two stacks of applicants. The ones that were certified and the ones that weren't. Not to say that the ones that weren't were not going to get looked at, they certainly were. But the CBET people had a little bit of a leg up on them because they had taken the time. It's a professional certification. It means something. It's not something that you sat down for some test and you got lucky and you passed, now you're CBET. It's not what it is. Passing rate on getting certified is it's barely 50%. So when you pass that, it means something. To get CEUs means something. You become a professional biomed when you become certified. You really do that, in my mind. You're already a professional biomed if you're working as a biomed, but have references ready. Have those people. Managers and leaders are best, but have those references ready. Again, I have them ready myself. Keep your eyes and ears open. Consider whether you are willing to move. Choose your next move wisely. Presenting and networking and publishing. Present within your own department. If you're a little bit afraid to get up in front of people, maybe your manager will notice something in you and he'll have you present at shop meetings. Have you stand up and present numbers or whatever it might be. Get yourself out in front. It's not as daunting or scary as you think. Right whenever you were asked, Izabella went over there a little bit about that before. You could go to Amy blog. They're always looking for content. All the magazines are looking for content. 24/7 is looking for content. TechNation looking for content. If you have something you want to write and you can do it, and they'll help you edit it. Don't feel like you got to be a master writer. I've written some things and I never consider myself a good writer, but they polish it up really nicely. They may. Introduce yourself. Make sure you introduce yourself to one person today that you don't know. Maybe even 2 or 3 people you don't know. If you're a little bit of an introvert, I know that's complicated. Maybe it's a little bit uncomfortable. Be uncomfortable. It's okay. You can come up to me and introduce yourself. I'm happy to meet you. I'm shy and I don't like to talk to people, so it's really tough for me. As you can tell, I love talking about this. I'm very passionate about this field we're in. Meet other professionals in your area if you can. Start to build your own network. Start to build it now. Your case about you never know. I never thought I was going to leave California, and all of a sudden I'm in Houston. I'm in New York City. I'm in Vero Beach, Florida. Build your network now. Have a mentor or be a mentor. Right? Those of you who've been in the field for a while, start mentoring people or ask people to mentor you. I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to be your mentor if you have any questions at all. Engage in your local or national associations. Enough said about that, right? Join Amy, join your HTM association, subscribe to publications. A lot of them are free. TechNation's free, 24/7 is free. BIT is not that expensive if you're an Amy member. Join groups whenever you can if it's something that's interested, like HIMSS or ACCE. Start a group in your area if there's not one in your area. If there's not a biomed, local biomed association, come up and talk to me. We started one in Houston from scratch, from no members to a couple hundred members now, and they're very active. You can do it. Take stretch goals. I know we got like 30 seconds, but I could talk fast, I promise. Get certified. Take a leadership role when you're asked, if it's offered to you. Don't be afraid, right? Another thing about leadership roles, I'm going to tell you, the biggest tip hack I can tell you about being a leader is be yourself. I talked to a couple people already about this. Be authentic. You're being asked to take on a leadership role because of who you are, not who you possibly could be. You don't have to be all of a sudden become the tough, hold people's feet to the fire type of person. Just be yourself. Be authentic. Be a leader. Take on champion roles if you can in your area. Grow, stretch a little bit. Do you remember who this guy is? Stretch Armstrong. That's right. My last name's Armstrong, so I thought it was kind of cool, right? And ask your leadership how you can move up in your organization. As a manager, I used to love the conversation when someone come in and say, Don, can I have a couple minutes with you, or can I get on your calendar for a couple seconds? And they would come in with the kind of a really good, thoughtful description of what they wanted to do. And not just coming in and saying, I want this. I want to move up because I want more money. I'll be like, hey, listen, you want to manage your job. Believe me, you won't be that thrilled about the money eventually because I'm probably going to, you're going to be exempt all of a sudden. You could work one overtime shift in the OR and you make more than taking this job. But you know, you want to go to your leadership and find out. Most of the time, to God that they'll talk to you about it. Giving back, mentor people in your field. Always try to lift people up. Don't tear anybody down. Encourage new co-workers. I don't know if I spelled tear right. Is that tear or tear? I don't know. I couldn't remember how to spell tear. Tear. Don't tear anybody down. Find the next generation of ATMs. If we're right now, the entry point for ATMs is getting a little bit easier, right? We have the system biomeds coming in, the CAB-T certifications coming in. If you got a friend of yours that loves to work on computers and is a great video game player, maybe they'd be a good biomed. Start introducing them into the idea that can happen for them, right? Share your experience and stand up and be proud of what you do. Really, we should be celebrating it. Remember those tough questions I asked you? Hopefully you've thought about it a little bit. I know I went through them quick, but think about it. Are you doing everything you can? Are you gonna get a higher education? Are you gonna move? Are you willing to do everything you can? Those are the kind of steps you could take, strategies you could take on your own. Dream big, be bold, you know? Go for what you want to go for. You want to be in imaging, you're a biomed now, and you want to go into imaging, think about it. You're an imaging person, you want to get into leadership, start striving for that. You can do it. It's your own career, and you can contact me, Don Armstrong, darmstrong at renovo1.com. Get to my little pictures. There's me and my dad. My dad was a mechanic at a big factory at local, so I got my kind of dexterity and mechanical skills from him, I think. There's my son, my daughter-in-law, my little granddaughter, Izabella. No relationship to her, Izabella. Here's me and my wife. That was years ago in Rome. There's Sudi. You can see Sudi over there. See yourself? Yeah, and it's me at an AMI conference. Here was our last picture of our biomed group in Stanford, probably just a couple months before I left, the HTM week. And there's, of course, my lovely wife doing some presentation again. Always seems impossible until it's done. And Nelson Mandela quote from Izabella. I think they talked about that yesterday in the guy's magician, the keynote. No one ever thought you could run a 4-minute mile until one person did it. Yeah. Yeah. Another correlation. So I know we went through a lot, and I know that we probably have a few minutes until the next session. Does anybody have any questions? Hopefully you guys have a lot of questions. You're going.